Here on the Creative Thinker Podcast, we discuss all theories, philosophy, and thought behind the creative process. And we hope that you find some inspiration along the way.
Well, it is October. To all the creative thinkers out there, we are doing session 0 today.
Is it October?
It will be when this comes out.
Dude, I looked at the wrong thing. I was like, no, this is coming out mid-September.
This is the intro. Don't derail. Okay. Session 0 is what we're talking about today. We're going to be going over 10 tips and one bonus tip there at the end of the episode for your session 0. A lot of people, it seems like, prefer to just dive right into the campaign, and we're going to tell you why it's just a better idea if you do a session 0, especially if you're getting together a new adventuring party. This is a great way to get to know them, to get them to congeal around the table. Mm-hmm. Congeal is
a good word for that.
Yeah, the wrong word. Anyway, get everybody start gelling and hanging out. So, Michael, what's a session 0? We're talking about tabletop role-playing games, of course, just to get everybody else oriented. Dungeons and Dragons,
tabletop role-playing, whatever, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, whatever gameplay, tabletop role-playing game that you want to play, session 0 is vitally important. We've said it a couple times already. What is a session 0? Well, according to Modular Realms, Session 0 is a dedicated session run before the campaign begins to go over ground rules and establish expectations. Its purpose is to create a space for open communication to understand each other's boundaries, create characters, and build a solid foundation for your game. And just like Henry said, we're going to be going over 10 tips right here on how to run your Session 0 and one bonus tip at the end of the episode. So listen all the way to the end. All right, so with that being said, we're just going to dive straight into our first tip. And these are going to be kind of, the tip is, we're just going to say a word and then we're going to kind of get into what each one is. So we're talking about group logistics, right?
What does that mean, Michael?
Group logistics is, when are you going to play the game? Are you going to play the game after work, before work, after everyone's done, or where, online, when, where, and how often are you going to be playing together? That's the number one thing, right? We want to get together. We want to play games. We got to figure out a time on when to do it.
And the great thing about a session 0 is that you've got everybody in the room. Like, when you're setting up a D&D campaign, a lot of people are going to be a little bit nervous about that because it can be, it can be years. If it goes well and everybody's having a good time, it can be years. So you want to make sure that you have everybody in the room and you can address any kind of concerns. Like if anybody's a little bit hesitant, you can kind of feel that out and get them in front of the people they're going to be having fun with, and hopefully everybody gels, But if not, they can also figure that out before they commit to this long-term thing, right? So it's really important to have that session 0, make everybody feel comfortable.
Yeah. And then, so that was our first point for group logistics. Second point is, how long are your sessions going to be? I think this would have been a real good one to talk about when we started our game, because when we started, it was just like, we're going to have fun. The first couple sessions were maybe like 4 or 5 hours, which is, if you look at any D&D live stream or any role-playing game live stream on YouTube or Twitch, they're about anywhere between 3.5 to 4 or 5 hours. And then I'll see some like event games, if they're doing them for like an event or something, they'll run their session for about 3 hours, 3.5, because they have a cutoff time for the next game to start running. 3 hours is kind of short for us. And had we talked about and initially said, we're going to play 8 to 12 hour sessions, we probably would have been like, wow, that's a lot of time. That's a whole work day right there that we're devoting to playing a game.
Might have been a little hesitant.
You might have been a little bit hesitant, but we ended up, our group, for us, it works to run 6 to 8 or 10 hour sessions. Super long. And obviously when we do those, we're taking breaks. And one of the things that we'll talk about later too is who's bringing the food. I think that we can put that here in group logistics. How's the food situation going to work? How's the snack situation going to work? You want to give a little tip on what we do as our gaming group?
I mean, like, we definitely take turns making snacks and food. And so if we're going to order, we all take time to do that. But I think one of the cool things that we do is we'll get away from the table and we talk. Like when we're eating food, I think it's so fun. It's like we'll talk about the session for a few minutes and then we just catch up with each other.
Yeah.
And that didn't start at first. It was just sort of like morphed over time as we became better friends. It's like now we have that sort of built into our session. It's like, well, we're taking a break and it'll probably end up being about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
As we catch up and just learn more about each other and stuff. So the logistics of how you plan out your session, it's not all session. Like what happens when you get up from the table? If you're going to get up, like for me, I'm pretty antsy, a little bit ADD. Like I got to walk around every now and again. I got to sketch sometimes. It's like just to clear out all the extra trains in my mind so that I can focus on what I'm doing. So, it took us a little bit to get used to that with each other. It's like, okay, well, when Henry gets up, he's still listening.
Yeah.
He's still participating. It's just like he's got to be moving. So there's things like that now I know about myself, and like I would include that in a session 0 if I was going to do it. If I was DMing, it's like I like to move around and be theatrical and stuff, and that makes some people uncomfortable, like big gestures and getting super into it. I like to do accents and voices, even though I'm not very good at it. It's fun for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that can make people uncomfortable. So you want to figure out where that comfort level is too. But I think one really key thing is how long do you want the campaign to be? We never discussed that, and fittingly, we never arrived at an ending.
Yeah, that's right. I think we're 4 years in, or we're very close to 4 years in.
Almost 100 sessions, something like that.
Yeah,
right?
where I think we're at 80 something sessions. So we're about 12 sessions away from 100. And yeah, we never discussed like how long the campaign was going to go. And learn not necessarily from our mistakes, but I mean, this is good communication that you can have with your gaming group. We were talking as we're getting ready for the session 0 talk, like how weird and difficult it might be to add more people to our gaming group just because we already have been playing for this time. And so some of these questions have already been answered. And throughout the campaign and throughout our time playing, I have asked these questions. But in a session 0, I think it would just help so that you have an idea, especially as a DM, you have an idea of your story arcs that you're going to make. How many of them are you going to have? For a player, it gives you an idea of like what are going to be your most powerful, spells and abilities and stuff that you're going to be able to get. How are your story beats? How are you going to act knowing that you're only going to play this character for, 6 or 7 levels? So it's really a good idea to have an idea on how long of a campaign you want to be doing. Do you want to do it for like a year? Do you want to do it for months? Do you want to do it based on level, or do you want to try and reach the completion of level 20, which I think we're going to get pretty close to that as we've started talking about kind of the end game of our session, of kind of like it might wrap neatly together where you'll end around like 18 or 19, possibly 20. But that's for us, we are kind of coming to this end of the story arc as both end of level 20 and the end of the arc of the story that we wanted to tell. But we didn't talk about it before, and it would have been good to talk about it. I think I went in with the idea of reaching level 20 because I've heard so many gaming groups not reach it. I was like, we're going to do it. And
getting competitive.
Yeah. And we're getting pretty close to it for sure.
Well, I think another point that's really important about how long the story goes is like the dungeon master specifically. The more sessions you have, the more preparation. If you're running it, the best you can, the more preparation it's going to take. There's more storylines that you have to tie in. There's more NPCs. There's just all kinds of stuff that you have to move the goalpost on every session. And so the longer the story goes, the more preparation you have to do. I mean, for you, like we're almost at a month between sessions where we're at right now because there's so much that changes, and they're very rich sessions and they're very wonderful, but at the same time, it takes a toll on you. That's a lot of effort.
and another, tip for that, for how long you want to go on your sessions, the amount of prep that I'm putting in is because my players are level 14, 15, 16, right? They're very high level players. We're in the last tier of, as far as Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition goes, we're in almost the last tier of gameplay right now. So each session got a lot more oomph to it than maybe the earlier sessions, right? Something that, as far as, damage output, something that can kill you guys at the level you're at, I definitely wouldn't be putting early in the game. And so again, it's just story arcs. The story becomes a lot bigger, a lot more drastic. There's a lot more consequences. You guys become a little bit more OP. Your enemies become a little bit more OP. And at the beginning of the campaign, you don't necessarily need to have all of that. There's a lot of pre-made stats already that you're able to use, especially in the monster manual and things like that, that as a DM, you're able to use that will make it a little bit easier. And in those early sessions, I only needed about maybe once a month, I needed about a 5 or 6 hour DM time just to prep. But then in between sessions, sometimes I didn't prep at all. I just kind of looked at my notes from the week before and I was like, okay, we're still hitting this story point and we're still moving on with it. So at the lower levels, you can kind of get away with that a little bit more. At the higher levels, it's a little bit harder because of all the spells that you're able to do, the travel that you're able to do. And typically, once you're at that high tier of play, everything needs to have a point that your players are doing.
Yeah, well, I think that is a good point. All of that is going to be really important as you continue. And if you have players that aren't really interested in learning the mechanics, then you definitely want to make sure that you stay at those earlier levels. And if chances are, if they choose barbarian as a class, they're probably not going to be very good at the mechanics. That's what I chose. Anyway. So, one question I've gotten all the session zeros I've ever done is, what's the deal with the miniatures?
Yes.
And that is such a big thing. And it's like, are you going to play with a grid, or is it all theater of the mind?
Right.
Is it all like, do you expect your players to spend, let's say a miniature would be like $10 maybe a little less, depending on shipping. And then that's their character for how long, right? Like, so what's their commitment of money versus what's their commitment, in time, all that stuff. You want to make sure that it's good and balanced so that nobody feels like, this game is going to cost you like $600. Just jump in.
I mean, at the end of the day, like D&D is supposed to be a mainly theater of the mind kind of game. Well, I don't want to say mainly because it actually started off as a war game, but what it's turned into now is where it really can turn into theater of the mind. Again, when I talk about like some of the streams that I've seen online, it's majority theater of the mind. You're having to figure out where stuff goes, but with a larger group, miniatures actually helps. And with the way that I like to run combat, miniatures help because it becomes a lot more strategy on moving around and what you see from a top-down view. And I enjoy that. But if I would have gone into D&D being like, you're going to spend X amount of money on miniatures, I would have been like, I don't know if this is the hobby I want to get into.
But 12 hours a day, right?
Yeah, right.
It's a huge investment if you get real into it, but you don't have to.
Yeah, it really is. And then there are other ways to do it, like the one we play with Shannon and Evan, a lot of it is theater of the mind. They have a grid that we use, and they have like paper miniatures. So you're still using the grid, but you're not having to spend, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on miniatures. If you're buying miniatures, you want it to look like the monsters and stuff there. So you got to buy, the 2 giant miniatures for when you're running giants. But it's good to talk about that at the beginning of your gaming group. If you're going to do it, are you only going to do it for your main PCs? Are you going to be using, food? I hear a lot of people use food or like M&Ms and Skittles and things like that, or some different types of candies for like the enemies on the field. And whenever you defeat an enemy, you can eat your candy or whatever.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so there are different ways to do it. And then just think, if you are into miniatures, you don't have to just use Dungeons and Dragons miniatures or WizKids miniatures. Go grab Legos, grab random stuff that you see at the dollar store. We are recording close to October, and guess what is in a lot of stores right now is Halloween stuff. So hey, go out and grab some Halloween stuff, and then you have your skeletal miniature. You have your crazy monster that was $5 and at HEB, but now, it would have been $30 or $40 if you went to like a miniature website to grab it.
A 3D printer or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think that brings us to the end of group logistics with this one following point. A lot about Dungeons and Dragons is role playing. If you play it, according to the rules as stated, right? It's a tabletop role playing game, and so some people don't like role playing. Some people would rather just sort of talk normally and not really even have conversations with NPCs and things like that. So it's like, it's important to talk to your group about what they're comfortable with. Like, is your expectation that everybody's going to be using a voice for their character? Is it everything that they say out loud has to be in character? Or is it like, yeah, let's do a lot of metagaming. Let's make it a lot about math. Let's make it a lot about where your character is and strategy and things like that.
Yeah.
It's important to have those conversations. And it's also important to really celebrate those things when they happen. You want to make sure that you're being a good steward of your game, especially if you're the dungeon master, but also as players, everybody's there together to encourage people, so if you want people to be making voices and the person next to you does a really good voice and they've kept it for most of the session, then you want to make sure you say, hey, good job on that voice. That was really cool. I enjoyed that.
For sure.
You make sure you're including people and celebrating them.
Absolutely. We're playing a Game of Thrones campaign right now, and the voices in there are perfect. It's nice. I always go in to try and do a voice, and then I end up just doing some variation of my voice. But Shannon, Evan, y'all's voices are dope. All right.
Perfect.
Bringing us to our second point
of 10.
A second point of 10 is our social contract. And so what do we mean by a social contract? We don't mean actually getting out a contract and having you sign, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to go on my own and make the story all about me and not, talk.
Blood oath.
Yeah, right. So it's just, talking about how you're going to treat the other players at the table. Luckily for us, we've had a pretty good group. Where we haven't had too much of issues talking about how we're going to interact with each other at the table. But, if you're in a group with other people, just remember that this is a collaborative storytelling game that we're trying to do so that we can all enjoy it. So if you have one person taking up too much space, try and set the ground rules to where you can talk to that person and that everyone feels comfortable talking to each other about, the give and the take that needs to be happening there at the table. Also, something that I really think is important is the themes that we're going to be exploring. And if you cross that line, having a good relationship with your players to know that if I cross the line, just talk to me. I know, again, in a campaign that I was playing or that will be playing off and on right now, the theme of sexual assault got brought up, and we weren't sure what the DM's mind was on that. And so he asked us, like, is this okay? Like, I know your job with my wife, I know your job dealt with that in the past. Do you feel comfortable with me running that? And so that was something in the social contract that you want to do, talk about the themes that you want to explore in your campaign and see if it's going to cross the line or not. At the time that we started, there are definitely some that my gaming group started, Fine Stars Finest. When we started, both of our wives were at a job where they had to see and deal with that a lot. And so I didn't want to bring any of that to the game because I wanted it to be an escape from that. So I just didn't bring up any type of, child abuse or sexual assault or anything like that because, the world is cruel already and they're already having to deal with those themes in real life. We don't need to bring that into our fantasy life at the moment, So
yeah, there's definitely like all forms of entertainment. If people want to, have murder mysteries or things like that, like you're definitely dealing with a lot of things that are like heavier topics and more difficult things for people to contend with, especially once you get into theater of the mind. If you've never played Dungeons and Dragons or a tabletop RPG before, it's like a little bit more intense than reading a book because you're sitting there and you're being the character. It's like you're acting it out and it's not a planned story and you're helping create it. So the themes are going to hit you harder than they would if you were reading a book or if you were watching TV. So you may be, you want to make sure that you have that comfort so that you can raise your hand and say, hey, this is a bit much. I need to take a break or whatever. And it's good for the DM to express ahead of time.
And on that, there are a lot of groups who have like a safe word or some type of card or some
Lanolin.
Yeah.
That's our groups.
Yeah. So that's like, well, that's the attack word.
Yeah. That's all we do.
Yeah. No, they have some safe words that are like, hey, this has gone a little bit past my point of comfort. Again, we're here to have fun. And so if there is something that is being done, if you don't feel safe in the moment to say something, or you don't want to ruin the vibe, express something to your DM or the group as a whole and be like, hey, I was uncomfortable at this point. Some people have a card that or some groups I've heard have a card that like they'll bring out of their stuff and put it kind of like towards the DM so they can see like, okay, or they can see that they may have crossed a line there. And this includes, I think, what we were talking about, even voices and stuff like that. Sometimes people can get into the role playing and there can be like yelling and screaming that could happen. And I haven't really played with that yet. But if people are yelling in character, sometimes things get uncomfortable. So I think it is very important for that to be a ground rule. Like, how far can I take the role playing? And are we all comfortable with that role playing going to that extent? Because like I said, it can be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've actually heard a lot of D&D groups break up because they bring in the idea of racism between classes, like orcs and elves or things like that, and it's like it just degrades a campaign. Like it's not great in reality,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
and it's not great in a gaming instance either.
I mean, we played a Call of Cthulhu game, and the N word got thrown around a little bit too flippantly because it was the time and the era that we were playing, and some sexism.
Way too
and it's
much.
like this isn't the vibe that we wanted to play, and we stopped playing after that. But like
Yeah.
that wasn't the vibe that we were into, right? I mean, it's just, life again is already rough as it is. Why do I need to go into a fantasy role playing game and then also have that element in the game? So we decided to not play that anymore.
So be careful with your themes, because I mean, it can be so uncomfortable that you lose friends over it. It is possible, and it's just because you're comfortable with something doesn't mean everybody else around you is going to understand where you're coming from, why you're doing it, or be comfortable with it. So a little bit of empathy is helpful, and that covers group logistics, your social contract, and one thing that's probably good to talk about at this point is number 3, player absences.
Yes. So I definitely have heard when we're doing research on this, a lot of people are talking about, do the PCs run the person that's not there? Do they run their characters? Does the rest of the group run it? Or does the DM run that PC that's not there, player character, if you're not following? Or what's the case? For me personally, I find different scenarios for the character to not be there. Whether there was one time that you couldn't play, like we were all there and you just weren't feeling good. You just needed to lay down for a little bit, take a nap. That was one of our like 6 or 7 hour sessions. So, Henry missed, maybe 2 hours of it. But in game, I drew up something different for the characters that were there, and your character was sick in game, because how often does your D&D party get sick, right? Not very often. So that was, a fun thing that we got to play on, and it continues to be. It's funny to me because where you got sick doesn't exist in my world anymore because I misremembered it. So that's how I run player absence. I find a reason for the player character that they're playing, to not be there. And if you want to see a good example of how to make the story work, look at Critical Role's first season. They have a player who, she was in a TV show and she couldn't make it to a lot of the sessions. But when she was there, like that was their home group that they played in, and she wanted to continue to play it. So the dungeon master had to make a way to where this character could magically go across, continents and things like that. And how he ended up doing it was like she took on like kind of like a spirit or magical presence. So she wasn't like there in her physical body, because whenever she had to leave and go back to filming, it kind of got brought away, or she would meet them up somewhere if it was something that if it was a place that the story made sense for her to be at.
Yeah, I think that's really cool when you can kind of blip them out and say they're on a special mission that you as the DM can fill in the gaps for, and then just sort of hand them when they come back and say, okay, this is a paragraph. If anybody asks where you were, then you can describe the mission you've been on and just sort of jump back in the group.
Yeah.
Because then, the people listening, especially for something like Critical Role, there's tons of people listening. So the people listening can catch up on the story and be like, oh, that's why they're gone. Cool. As long as there's a narrative element, I feel like that helps a great deal. And I feel like I've heard too many horror stories about like the DM using the being the computer, so to speak, and like taking over for a character. And it's difficult because a lot of people don't expect what the players do in terms of dungeon masters, right?
Yeah.
Or even other players. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting you to do that at all. And it's like, well, if the DM takes over, then it's literally someone else is using your character. And we talked about, it being like 8 to 10 hours sessions or doing 20 sessions. We're almost at session 100, right?
Yeah.
If somebody else played my character, like that's very personal to me at this point.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with that character. I spent a lot of time deciding the decisions I'm going to make. And then you hear about the story and you're like, I wouldn't have done that. And it went bad. Of course it went bad. I didn't do it, know?
Yeah.
So much, especially if you had like a TPK or something, which...
horror stories, yeah. I've heard of where it's either a TPK or a player comes back. If you look at, Reddit has a lot of horror stories of
it's like
D&D.
total party killed or something
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
TPK is a total party kill, but even they'll come back and the group will be like, oh yeah, your character died last session, but we ended up surviving. We tried our best, but you have to roll up a new character now because your character you've been playing is dead. It's like, well, like you're not going to make any story reason for me to like not have been there or not have died. Like I just feel like that's why I try and take the player out of the equation. So nothing happens. You can come up with your own backstory. You can come up with your own thing that happened while your player was out.
And if you don't think terrible things like that are common, listen to Dungeon Court.
Oh yeah, right. Stuff happens, man.
They've got all kinds of crazy stuff that you'd like. That no human being would do that, but yeah.
One other thing, when we're talking about player absence, are you going to continue playing the game without having the whole party there? Luckily, we're in a group. Like our home group is 2 married couples, so it's a lot easier for us to plan things together. It's not like a group of like 6 or 7 or 4 different people who are living completely different lives. Like typically our schedules all align. If 2 or 3 of our schedules align, then the 4th one should make it for the most part. So our games are a little bit easier to still make that stuff happen. But how do you interact or how do you continue to play if all the players aren't going to be there? Do you continue with the story? Do you find something different? Me as a DM, sometimes if I know that we have a good time to play, but someone's going to be out, typically I'll run a different game. Still D&D, but I'll run like a different setting or a different kind of one shot, either in the world or like a Star Wars setting. I know we all really like Star Wars, so we've run a couple Star Wars one shots when my wife was out of town and I happened to have the weekend off and we all happened to have time to spend together. I was like, hey, I'll run a one shot for us. We'll just do some Star Wars stuff. And then, we still got to play the game, but we didn't take any agency away from my wife's character. So, that's something to discuss and talk about what you're going to do if people aren't there. I've heard if one person's not there and you have a larger group, you continue to make it move on. But if like 2 or 3 people there or half the group's not going to be there, you're going to cancel the session. And what equates or what's the stipulation for you to cancel the session? Stuff to talk about as a group.
I like to do prequels.
Yeah.
So like here's something we know about your backstory. They're not here. Let's do a flashback, and we'll have I'll have the people that are there. We'll choose one person to do their backstory, and then the other person will keep the same stats, and we'll roll through it. They'll just have a different name for the session, and then next time we can come back and jump in with everybody. That way, the story is already sort of there. We can just and the story beats are already sort of there. So if it's a surprise, it's okay because the story is written, but how exactly it went down, that's for us to find out. That's another option. How do you level up? That is such a big that can be so frustrating. but so good.
Yeah, so moving on to our fourth point is how to level up. So there are two methods, especially in Dungeons and Dragons. There is the milestone method, which is when an event occurs or some big moment, some milestone moment happens in the campaign, people level up. Or experience to level up, which is like each encounter or puzzle or whatever, they gain experience. And then from there, how do you determine if the whole group is going to level up, or are you going to level up individually? I know, and I've heard like some people will keep track of their own XP and they'll tell the DM when they level up, which is interesting because that's not how my introduction to D&D was watching Critical Role, and they kind of did milestone leveling up. So that's why I tend to do that a little bit more. But I mix the two, honestly. I start off at the lower levels, experience to level up. It's a lot easier to track because you're only going up to, maybe 600 to 1,000 or 2,000 XP. I can't remember. I have it on my DM screen, like up to level 7, how many experience points you need to get to the next level. And so, there are two ways to do it. Just be open and transparent as a DM and as a player, or what you want or what you expect. As a DM, I do both because the XP helped me have an idea of when the players were going to be getting to that next level. And then I kind of used milestone to move them up. When was the next pivotal point that was going to happen to move them up? Once you start getting to like, 10,000 XP or 20,000 XP, it's just a lot, for you to handle. I know there's a spot on the character sheet to put what your XP is, but I think that's a little bit too much to keep in mind. I take a look at my encounters. I see about how much XP it's going to be. So I have an idea of like, okay, they're a quarter of the way there, or they're half the way there from this combat. And then the next, couple sessions, they'll probably end up moving up. I know actually someone, I want to say it is Matthew Colville, and it could be wrong. He runs it to where there's a set amount of sessions before you move up to the next level. And I think that's very interesting, right? At one session, you gain 1 level. 2 sessions, you get to the next level. You go to level 2. After 3 sessions, so you run 1 and then you run 2 more to get to level 2. And then you run 3 more and then you get to level 3. So by your 5th or 6th session, you're already at level 3.
That's interesting.
It's an interesting way to run it, especially if you want it to kind of go a little bit quicker. It's interesting. I would be curious to run a setting like that. I think things are going to move pretty quickly if you do something like that, because you have a set amount of sessions, right? Because I can't do the math right now.
You're pretty close to that, I think, anyway, because you'd be at 100 so fast.
Yeah.
The last levels.
Yeah. So it's we would
whatever the math is.
Whatever the math is.
Thanks, Math Whiz.
Yeah. Whoever does the math for us, thank you.
Whoever's listening in India, type that up. That's just one of the top countries. I don't mean to call anybody out.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So that's how I run it. I know you've run some games. How did you run the leveling up stuff?
So for me, I think the milestone system is really my favorite by a lot, because XP, it's you can level up after just running into some random orcs while you're out walking around. And that doesn't feel very good. As a player, it's it does, because it's surprising and it's nice, and you sort of stumble into, oh, now I'm level 2, great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would much rather level up when something awesome happens. And that's why I really like the milestone system. It's okay, that was a really big moment. Sometimes as a DM, I feel like we have a really big moment I didn't expect. Or the players get really emotional about something. One of my rules is we're going to stay in character 99% of the time. Everybody should be speaking in character, including myself. If you got to do math, do it in your head. Just tell me what the final number is, and I'll write it down. We try to keep it very much role play, very much improv. And I think there's some really surprising emotional moments. It's I've had people tear up at the table, and it was this is sort of a beautiful moment I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
And I like to reward that with you're leveling up. If it's a fight based, obviously, but if it's this was a hard one, I can tell people's faces I'm going to give them a level on this, because especially the longer you're in a campaign, people are going to become desensitized to the plots.
Yeah.
And so when you throw in something new, then and it works and it kicks off people's imagination and they're reinvesting in the game, so to speak. They're getting excited about it again, because sometimes you can hit lulls where it's like, this plot line isn't as interesting as I thought it would be. Everybody's participating and it's still fun, but you can hit these lulls where it's like, okay, we should move on.
Yeah.
So when you hit the good ones and everybody's really invested, I like to throw in a level up as well. It doesn't happen so often that you're like, yeah, they're going to be like level 60. And
Yeah.
you know, so if that's a fear of yours, then I would say wait till you're at the table and decide. But for me, I think my players got to level 9.
I think it was
that.
like 7 or 8, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we played for, I think, 8 months on that campaign, 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And so maybe once a month we leveled up, and I thought that went really good, actually. So
very fun. I think, you know,
how I like
how
it.
you want to tell the story. I think if you're more storytelling, then you tend to end up doing milestone. If you're more like combat needs to be, you know, this or that, and you need to gain the experience, then you'll use XP.
we were talking about gritty the other day on the podcast, right? That
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
grittier would be more numbers, more math.
Exactly. So sometimes I like to be loose with it, and it's like you guys have gone through a lot, so I'll find the next, you know, good moment to level you guys up. So
There's a little niche in here. Niche?
Niche.
However you say it. Niche. With
Niche.
number 5, this is where your niches are. Your niches.
Yeah.
Anyway, your rule variants. This is where it comes out. Number 5. I like to use a rule variant called that I just homebrew. That was called Badass Action.
Yeah, that was
And
fun.
so a lot of times when you're at the table, like, people get really creative and they come up with just the weirdest shit you've never heard of,
Yeah.
you know, or never thought of. And it's like, well, can I run down this beam, jump, light this on fire, and then just start punching the guy? Like, I don't even know where that came from, but it's great that you thought of it, and sure, let's try it. So I made a mechanic around that. I think it's like 18 or higher. Then it's like, you're going to do it and it's going to be awesome. It's
Yeah.
sort of like you can do pretty much anything, even if it breaks physics, even if it's sort of world breaking to a degree. I just wanted to make sure I gave my players the opportunity to do whatever they wanted and feel really heroic and more like they're in a movie than
Yeah,
than
I
D&D.
think one of our fights, we had a fight with a kraken, and I had made my character, like, not made him, but like this gold dragon was a pseudo patron. We had a connection, we had a bond, and I jumped
That's so
off.
funny.
I jumped off the dragon into the kraken to like start attacking, and I used a badass action to do either a lot of damage and survive the fall, and ended up rolling enough to where my character didn't die just from fall damage.
Yeah, I think it was like he was like 100 feet up, and then whatever they call it, whirlpools in the ocean, was happening, and the kraken's at the bottom of it, and he just like swan dove off like Assassin's Creed style with,
Yeah,
with
exactly.
the trident, and it's like, you know, you're seeing all the ocean creatures around and the mer people and stuff, and it was like this huge battle, and he's just like descending right in the middle of it, and I was like, yeah, that would be badass. Yeah, let's do it. You know, and he rolled well enough, and so it was like, it worked out perfect. So
As far also when we're talking about rule variant, we're also talking about what game are you going to play, what version of the game, right? Dungeons and Dragons has gone through a couple different editions, where the most current edition is 5th edition, and I think they have like D&D like 1 coming out, kind of coming out soon, that's supposed to be backwards compatible with D&D. But this is where you talk about, are you going to be running just straight from the player's handbooks? Are you only running published stuff from Wizards of the Coast? Are you going to be running third-party stuff? I tend to be open, and this is me personally, I like variation of the rules. I like third-party stuff because sometimes, because they're not having to appease, you know, the people at Wizards and Hasbro, this is how I feel. They're able to create a lot more cool, badass stuff, man. Like, you have some subclasses that are like really legit, like Monster Hunter subclasses, or like just samurai subclasses that are better than the samurai class that came out for 5th edition, and a huge variety, different like wild magic barbarians that are actually more than rolling just a d10 for their entire time as a barbarian, and there's a lot more creativity that happens when you look at third party. Obviously, as a DM, you want to look through and make sure it's balanced enough for you, but me as a DM, I'm like, almost anything can go. We'll make it work. If it's not fair, then I will nerf it. But for the most part, I like the chaos because we're here to have fun. As long as we're all having fun and it's not taking away too much from the group, then I like it. But
I think another thing that you do really well is that you describe everything that you're going to do in great detail. I mean, like, and by great detail, I don't mean that you're verbose about it or you talk too much. I'm saying that you go into very specific details. So we know exactly what the boundaries are before we use the new rule.
Yeah.
We discuss it before the session starts so that, nobody's like crying foul when we get there and saying, well, that's way too overpowered. We're not doing that. Then it's like, okay, well, we discussed it before the session, everybody agreed on it, and we all decided this is the best way forward, So, and I feel like we're a good communicating group for that reason, because it's like, well, okay, even if you have some hesitance with the rule, you'll tell us what it is and say, well, these are the two ideas that I think work the best, and then we kind of just vote on that. And I think as long as you're staying interactive with your party, I've heard like so many stories, and I kind of wonder how it goes for other people. I'm not jealous of it because they'll say that it becomes very much them versus the dungeon master, and that's, to me at least. I mean, for that may work for some people, but to me at least, I don't want it to feel like that. Like I feel like I'm playing your NPCs and you're playing against my character, and it's never like contentious between you and I because we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. But it sounds like a lot of parties get like that, where it's like, well, no, I'm gonna beat them this time. It's like, well, why do you got a chip on your shoulder about it? It's like, anyway,
you as a DM are God. Like you can throw anything in. So like, why you want to try and make it competitive like that?
Yeah. Like you're gonna win, right? Like
right.
Another troll.
Exactly.
Okay, they're dead. Oh, what a surprise! I'm a winner now.
But yeah, any type of like additional rules. Like I've been watching a lot of anime, so I added a hit die rule to like push the characters past their limit. I explained it to my group. I liked it. If you want to hear about it, definitely let us know, and we could do a little segment on how I like to use the hit dice and where I am coming from for that whole idea. But yeah, I was very clear about it, and you very clearly abused the rule that I gave you.
Yes.
With a magic item that
there was a loophole. And
there was.
That may have been wrong of me, but I think narratively it worked.
I think so too, and that's where I also said, if I feel like this isn't going to work, or if y'all feel like it's not going to work, then we'll take it away. But we've only had one session with it, and you found a loophole, and it's dope. I enjoyed it. I think thematically it makes sense for your character. And so now we're going to see, the next couple sessions. Is that something we're going to keep? I haven't run it at a low level. Is it something that's just a lower level thing, or maybe just a higher level thing? Who knows? But, I was very clear with it, and, it's fun. It's fun for us. If you're not having fun with rule variations, take them out. Like we don't do flanking for Evan's campaign because it does kind of get clumpy on it. But I also run flanking a little bit differently in my games because I view fighting 2 or 3 people at a time as flanking. They don't need to necessarily be in a line. That's just how I view it because I'm a martial artist, and I know fighting 3 people at a time, even if they're all in front of me, is hella hard. So that's how I kind of rule it. I also rule what is it? Not magic missile. It's a cleric spell where you can you summon like a spiritual weapon. If it's a threat to an enemy, you can use it as flanking, right? If you have a magical weapon that is attacking someone from behind, yes, that is flanking because they're distracted by 2 threats. But rules as written, it is not flanking because it is not technically a person, it is a spell, which get out of here with that.
That's going to be controversial on the level of Harry Potter.
Yeah, it might be. So there are a lot of different rules. And then if you look, there are homebrew resurrection mechanics to make death more tough in your world. So, there are a lot of different variations of the rules. As a DM, go through them, see what your expectations are going to be. As a player, if you have no experience, then, this is all going to be new to you. But if you are an experienced player, this is the time to ask those types of questions. How are you going to do flanking? How are you going to do, this rule? How are you going to do that rule? Just so you are clear about it. how clear are you on spell usage, and how clear are you on the wish spell if you ever get it? How loose are you with the wish spell? I've been seeing people talk about wish spells online, and like my group has used like 7 wish spells.
So many.
Yeah.
And each one of them world breaking.
yeah. Each one of them another challenge for me as a DM, but it's been fun.
Yeah, I think sticking to the improv rule of yes and
Yeah.
as a group is also probably, that should be up in group logistics. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, we're halfway through our points, and we know what happens at that halfway point. We're going to be talking about a little inspiration of the week.
Start getting inspired.
And I have my inspiration ready if you are ready.
What? I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm so ready.
So
I want to be inspired by you.
my inspiration of this week, and I shared this with the guys with the people I play games with. It's a picture of a cat in a general costume, and maybe I'll
Tabaxi.
yeah, right. That's what it feels like. And this cat looks like wide-eyed, and it literally has like old general costume. It's got like the big shoulder pieces. It's got the medals on the collar.
Throw it up there. Show it.
And let's see. Let me turn my brightness all the way up. Let me turn it sideways. Okay, here we go.
Look at that.
All right. So let's see if
totes adorbs. There, it'll focus. Yeah, look at that.
There we go.
Perfect.
And so the title of this YouTube playlist is "You're a Spy Who is About to Be Exposed." And I thought that was hilarious because you're a cat. I'm a cat. So I thought that was super funny, and I listened to the playlist while I was writing stuff down and DM prepping. But the inspiration for me is I play a tabaxi in a wild game that we probably play like once every couple of months. It's called Tiamat's Tots, and we're all followers of Tiamat, the evil goddess. And I play a tabaxi that can also change into a dragon, and I like to do weird and crazy stuff as a cat. And so it just inspired me to also be more weird and crazy going into whatever I was writing. I don't even remember what I was writing, but it inspired me. It was like good classical music, but I just thought that was such a funny title. I love the titles of some of the YouTube videos that are like, you're running late in the morning and you're supposed to be at work at 8 a.m. and it's 8:30 or something like that. And it's like super fast paced classical music. So YouTube's got some pretty funny playlists.
Inspiring the improv and maybe inspiring you to get a general costume in game.
Yeah, 100%. Here, my character in game already so he's a bard, and so he has a war gong with him. So whenever stuff's about to go down, he pulls out of nowhere a war gong,
Giant
and then
war
just
gong.
goes gong, and then starts the fight. That's his role for initiative.
That's awesome. I think for me this week, what's been inspiring me is I like to go through different kinds of creativity and definitely, any type of making crafts. And wow, you just cracked your neck, and that really threw me off. That was a loud one, dude. You need to stretch after
I
work.
wonder
What's going on?
if the mic caught that, because that sent like a tingle in my points, in my right foot,
My points.
and in my right hand. That was a solid neck crack.
All of my points.
All of my tips. Sorry, the tips.
Anyway, so apart from the crack,
We're only
another
halfway
joke there.
We're only halfway.
Should we do part 1 and 2?
We'll see. We'll see.
Okay, so my inspiration, I like to do a lot of different type of crafting, and so I picked up clay this week. It's probably the second time in my life I've tried to do clay and like seriously arrive at a final product. And I don't have any of the tools yet, so it's just freehand, and I'm new to it. But it's a very additive art, I guess. So like, it just depends. It feels additive. It's like either like carving would be subtracting, and then like drawing, it feels like you're sort of pushing away from one color to the other, especially if you're working with charcoals, which I usually am. And this felt like very additive. Like I have to shape something and then I add it to the overall shape, and it kept growing, and it was like, wow, this is actually really cool. I've never used clay very seriously before, and I felt like I understood it a lot more, and it felt a lot more intuitive. I really, really enjoyed it, even though the final product still looked like a 5-year-old made it. So I'm looking forward to experiencing that more. And the whole process was cool of like, you know, painting it when it was done and cooking it and doing the whole deal. It was really neat. And yeah, it felt very immersive, and like I could really dive into it. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what I can make with that. And also, another hot take, controversially, Doja Cat's first good song.
Oh, God. Controversial.
Paint the Town Red, I think it's called. Something like that.
I don't know.
They'll know what I'm saying if they've heard of her before. That's the only song of hers that I felt like was any good. I was listening to the radio and I was like, why is there a song that's actually enjoyable on this thing? There's never good music on the radio. I don't know.
You're listening to the radio, dog?
Yeah, at work, man.
Oh,
at work.
okay.
I have to. It's beyond my control, and then that song came on and I was like, hey, this is kind of good. Like I'm bobbing my head to it, and it's been stuck in my head ever since I heard it. So you know, whatever producer made that good, it's been kind of inspiring me to look into more of that kind of music where it's like the vocals are in more minor key, and the beats are a little bit funky, and the night's a little bit fresh.
Yeah,
that's my inspiration for this week.
Solid.
What's number 6?
All right, reining it back into our 6th point. We're talking about a campaign pitch, right? This is where you as a DM...
Welcome to the campaign pitch.
Yeah.
Session 0.
This is where you as a DM come to the table with the idea that you have for the campaign, and what themes that you want to be hitting. I've never done this before, so I don't know how well it works. No, I'm just playing. With the last session 0 that we kind of ran, so when I took a trip up to North Carolina and stayed with some friends, we actually kind of did 2 session 0s where for pretty much the whole day, we stayed up there for a week. And for the whole day, we talked about 2 different campaign settings, and we talked about our characters, and we listened to music to get in our heads. We talked about, you know, the classes that we were going to play and this and that. But then both the DMs got to talk about, like, this is the story I think I want to tell here, especially at this level. These are the things that I expect. These are the things that, you know, I hope you guys expect. And these are the players' expectations. So that's really all the pitch is, seeing what they like from the campaign. Or seeing what they've liked before, what they would like to go into this idea. I think we went into a kind of Demon Slayer-esque campaign. So we got to talk about our stories and some of the stuff that we expected to see. And we were all excited for that, for a Demon Slayer type campaign. So that's where you can talk about it during session 0, what kind of campaign that you want to run.
Number 7, campaign setting.
Campaign setting now is exactly what you're going to be running the themes and stuff that you want in, right? So are you in space? Are there guns? Is there gunpowder? Is there low magic, high magic? What kind of setting are you doing? And if you look at even the Wizards of the Coast setting they have for 5th edition, we're talking about Dragonlance. We're talking about there's another one that starts with an R, but there's also Faerun. There's your own homebrewed world.
Like Avernus.
Ravnica. There's Ravnica. There's the Spelljammer setting. So there are a couple different settings that you can run it in.
And different mechanics, like you talked about, like Star Wars or Cyberpunk, any of that stuff.
Yeah, Cyberpunk. You ran.
I know Star Trek has one.
Well, yeah, Star Trek.
Only sci-fi over here. That's why.
You ran a pirate setting, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's the setting that you want to run it in? Session 0. Talk about it. And one of the biggest things that I want to start doing a little bit more, and through talking to you guys, we kind of explored this, but there are 3 pillars in D&D and most role-playing games. There's exploration, there's combat, and there's social interactions, which is role-playing, right? So what I saw when I was doing some research, someone they have their players write like a percentage on how much they like each one of those things, so then they know what to expect, or what, as a DM, what to put into the game. So if you're more into exploration, then let your DM know that that's something that you really like. If you like the combat and you like the tacticalness of that, then you're able to add that in more. Or the role playing, like we enjoy the role playing of stuff. Luckily our group is a pretty solid mix of that. So, but if there's something that you're not really great at, like exploration, sometimes I struggle with that. So I've been working on that to be a little bit better, because I feel like we can role play real well. I definitely got combat down, but the
100%.
exploration is something that you want more. And then as a group, talk about what your expectation is on those 3 pillars. I think that can really help you set up a really good campaign, and will let the dungeon master or a game master know what to focus their energy on, so that you, the player, are having fun.
Nice. We're blowing through these now. So that was number 6, the campaign pitch.
That was
number 7, the campaign setting. But what about everybody's favorite that's at the table? I don't know. It's mine anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, I've never met somebody that doesn't have fun with this next one.
We're talking about character creation. This is fun. I mean, this is where now you've talked about all the nitty gritty on what you want to do, how you want to do stuff, what your safe words are, what setting you want to do. This is where we're talking about you as a character and what character you are going to play now.
Go off.
This is where, so real quick, the biggest logistic thing is, how are you rolling stats? Are you doing them privately? You can't see it, but I'm shaking my head. Don't do it privately. Try and do it with a group of people. It just makes things a little bit more fair, so that someone doesn't show up with all 18s on their stats. They're like, dude, the dice were just on my side.
I just don't want to be bad.
Yeah. Or
you're going to be. Statistically, you're going to be.
Yeah, right.
Whoever needs to hear that out there in the ether.
Or are you going to roll standard or do the standard array, which is a predetermined set of numbers, I think, that you get to add whatever stats you want. So it's just fair across the board for everyone. There's point buy where you can, I don't know how it works. I've never used point buy, but there's point buy system. And then for some of our like super one shots, I will tell people like, you can't roll below an 8, because you're supposed to be a badass character right here. So if it's a below an 8, you get to re-roll it. So even if you have like 2 16s and a 14, I'm like, yeah, this is just part of it. That's part of being like this OP session that we're going to be in. Or you do 46, take 1 out, or whatever. There are so many different variations on how to roll, but this is where we talk about it. This is where you see, this is how you're going to roll your stats. And after you get that nitty gritty down, then we're talking about what class and race are you going to be playing. As a DM, are you going to be limiting any of those things? I know earlier we talked about, are you just doing to what's published? D&D, Wizards of the Coast 5th edition. Are you taking any third party in? Are you going to try and homebrew your own race? But have a normal class. This is where you get to have fun with it. And what you want to do. And then we also talk about character backstories at this point. Does your party know each other from the past and now they're coming together? Lots of options here. This is where you really have a lot of fun.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if your characters don't know each other, the first scene needs to be them meeting.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're a newer DM, like, don't even play with the idea that they don't know each other. They know each other. Just find out why.
Yeah.
Because
even if it's very recently, they should know each other. Like leading into session 1, they should have a general idea. It will make it work a little bit easier.
Like definitely newer players, it's like they're not necessarily going to know how to then build a story. It's like, if all the story centers around, which it does because they're an adventuring party, if all the story hinges on them knowing each other, just have them know each other.
Yeah.
A lot of people, whenever we talk about story, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast yet or not, but if tell the part of the story that you want to tell, drop them in where you need them to be.
Yeah.
That is always the best place to start, because if you start them way before, it's like, well, I want to work up to it. It's like, you end up in Michael's position where he's on the 3rd year of a campaign, 3rd and a half, almost 4.
Yeah.
Where we are just now entering what his vision was of the campaign in the first place. You know, so it's not that it's bad. We've enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
saying, like, if you're not planning to have a 3-year lead in to the payoff, then you might want to get to it.
For a lot of one shots, if you are running a one shot, yeah, I typically have them say, you know each other. You guys have already done something together. I'll let you guys figure out the backstory for that. And if we're starting at like level 1 or 2, I'll, either introduce you right at the start. But I think that's a whole different session. That's a whole different topic, talking about session 1. Here is where you just talk, if you do know each other and what your backstory is and where you came from. And I think here is where we talk about, talk with your DM about your backstory. Don't write 18 pages of your backstory, because this is the beginning of your adventure. This is not you've felled armies and slew dragons and now one goblin's going to take you out in the first turn of initiative,
Because you only have 4 HP.
Yeah, exactly. So, be realistic with your backstory as far as like, your character needs room for growth.
Yeah, I think there's one other important thing, which is, as you mentioned, but also that it's easier if your characters don't have meaningful connections nearby. Like, so they can have friends, maybe people that they work with or something. Like, some connection is fine, but if you have like, oh yeah, that their sibling is the most important person in the world to them kind of story, then it's like, okay, well, they're not in the adventuring party, so that kind of ends the story right there. Like, you're going to choose them over the adventuring party, and that's sort of game breaking. So, I mean, the old trope in video games is like, you wake up with amnesia.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, there's people you care about, but you can't remember them, so like later in the game, it can be a quest. Things like that it's like, it does help move the story along. And that's just a good little bonus tip for you.
Yep.
Moving us so sweetly into number 9.
And so this is an optional one, right? Number 9, asterisks. Roll dice and play. So depending on how much time that you've spent doing this, and if the DM has time, you have the opportunity to play so that everyone can feel the vibe that you're trying to put down, So we ran, like I said, the last session 0 I ran was kind of a full day session. And then my wife was talking about her character, and, her character wants to do this, and she kind of feels like this. And, what does she remember about this and that? And I was like, okay, I don't have anyone else's like first intro scene ready. I just have yours, Molly Ann. So let's run yours real quick. I think it'll help answer some of the questions that you have about your character and the vision that I see here. And if there's something different, we can work through it, but let's go ahead and play. And I was like, the other two, I was like, I don't have your stuff ready. I'm not ready to run like a full session, but I do have her stuff ready. And I think it is very important for her as she's thinking about her character, to have this ready. And I ran about an hour and 15-minute session for her. That did introduce one of the other PCs, and it worked. We gelled together, and she got the vibe of the backstory that got her to where she was at, and what she had given me and what I created, and helped create the vibe that was there for this small town. And we talked about it a little bit more, but that is, I had time and I had the opportunity to do that there because we had spent about a day doing it. If you're doing this, over the course of, first off, a session 0 you should probably, this is a lot of stuff, just talking about what you should talk about. We're hitting right at about an hour. So you should probably carve maybe 2, 3, 4 hours just to do this, or have some type of prep beforehand. Just food for thought. So then at the end of the session, if you have the time and are able and willing to do it, then you have the opportunity to do it. And it's okay to say like, hey, I have one story point for one character because I've only spent like 3 hours here with everyone coming up with stuff. I don't have a full session ready yet.
So story hooks is one thing, but when you're starting out a new group, getting them around the table and getting them playing is paramount to getting them invested. Right? It's your hook to come back next time. Yeah. Because this can be daunting, even if you did like 30% of this, that can be a lot for somebody who's never played before, for sure. So you want to give them a taste of the good stuff so that they come back. Get them hooked.
Mm-hmm. I think the first time I played like a role-playing game,
drug dealers feel the same way.
The first time I played a role playing game, we did like an Avatar one shot, and we said this is the nation that we wanted to be from. And I think Shannon wrote everyone's character sheets, and Evan went through and got all the spells for everyone, and all the things that they should have. And it was like, you're gonna stay at this level. It's just a one shot. This is gonna be what we are for the week. And so a lot of like the character creation process wasn't necessarily there for us. We did get to explore some of it, but if you're new, that can expedite the process just a little bit.
Yeah, definitely
and
be willing to help your players out.
Yeah, and feel less daunting, especially when we're like, what cantrips do you want as this spell user? And it's like, I don't know what does a cantrip even mean? It's like, oh, well, and then you start explaining it all, and it's like, this is a lot if you've never played.
I think you even rolled the dice for Vangerlin, my character.
I probably let you roll.
Our first session, it was like, I think you rolled some of the stats for him because it's like this is a lot. Like I didn't even have a dice set or anything.
Oh,
we were just
yeah.
there, and I was like, "Can you do it?" It was a lot. That was forever ago now, but yeah, it can be a lot. So just keep that in mind and try to have your finger on the pulse of your folks.
Mm-hmm. Last point
before we get to bonus.
Last tip that we have. We started rolling the dice and playing. Probably should have put these in a different order, but credit to the dungeon coach for this one. I used a lot of his, I don't want to say outline, but a lot of stuff that he talked about for session 0 and
number 10 secrets
to help us here. So yeah, number 10, it is secrets, right? Give your players some secrets so that they can use it in the campaign. It gives them something to look forward to, gives them something to make the world feel a little bit more alive, is knowing that there's other stuff happening that's not just immediately happening in your adventuring party. And if you give multiple people secrets, it gives them a sense of like ownership of the world. A little extra tip is do this also not just before your sessions, before your session 0 or before your session 1. That's something that I was able to do. There was a break in between levels after a really huge fight. I was like, let me give each of the players 2 weeks off, and this gives you time to have your own secrets and have your own thing that you can do. You especially held on to some secrets until recently. But also, everyone has something different to make the world feel a little bit alive and then come back together as an adventuring party. It's something I want to continue to play with because sometimes adventuring parties are together all the time and they never move away from each other and they never have any time. But I think in real life, like even the groups of people that you like spending your time around and do spend a lot of time around, you sometimes go off on your own. You have your own secrets. And so it just helps flush the world out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite quests from the campaign we've been doing isn't even really a quest. I just found a rock that was like a sending rock. So like I'm just talking to some guy on the other side of the continent that apparently like has a pretty in-depth family life and is just like a records keeper in some hall of like some faction that's on the other side of the world. And it's such a fun thing because it's like, okay, well if nothing's going on or if like it's just something I want somebody else's input on, I go off by myself and I'll talk to that NPC, right?
Yeah.
And it's so fun. That's one of the things I look forward to most. It's been years since I got that rock at this point, and I'm just like, that's still one of my favorite parts of the game. So, and it has almost absolutely nothing to do with the story.
Yeah, very, very little.
And so anyway, yeah, you can. Where people find their favorite moments in your campaign is sort of up to them. Like you just present them with a bunch of ideas and things that they can do, and what strikes their fancy is up to them. And so, being open to that experience leads to a much more rich campaign. Yeah. And does this leave us to bonus?
It sure does.
So we went through 1 through 10. Let me just remind you, it's been an hour. You've been sitting there listening patiently. You're a wonderful audience wherever you are in the world. Number 1, group logistics. Number 2, social contract. Number 3, player absences. Number 4, how to level up. Number 5, rule variants. 6, campaign pitch. 7, campaign setting. 8, character creation. 9, roll the dice and play. 10, secrets. Which brings us to the bonus round. Thank you for hanging out for this. What do we get as a bonus?
So my personal advice, bonus round, is be willing to change. In session 0, especially if you're a new character, sometimes you don't make the best decisions because you don't know. And as a DM, sometimes you also don't know. As a DM and as a player, be willing to change if you're not having fun. If you put numbers into a stat and then you're 3 or 4 sessions in, you're like, hey, I think I moved my stats around wrong. Is there an option for me to like change it? Sure, why not? Because we're here to have fun. We're here to tell a story, and I know I've done it. I think at like level 9 or 10 for my group, I was like, hey, we've been playing this for a long time. If anyone wants to move their stats around, like I think this is a good story point that we can do this right now. Because we all understand the game a lot more, a lot better now at this point. So if you want to move your stuff around, if you want to change your stats, I even offered if you guys wanted to change your class or subclass, because now that you've been playing this class for so long, if you wanted to change your subclass and you feel like, this subclass might be different, or I'm not getting as much out of this subclass as I really thought I was going to, you can definitely, change it. I won't do that for every group. And I think on our next session, I'll probably be like, hey, maybe around level 3 or 4, like, is this the class that you want to play, or do you want to change it up? But now at this point, for the rest of the campaign, you guys are stuck. But, it's something that I think is smart to do, because I know as like when my own D&D character, I made him a paladin of, I think, an Oath of Redemption or something, or Oath of Vengeance paladin. And then I turned him into an Oathbreaker because I kind of like that feel. I like that vibe more. And luckily my DM was nice enough to accept that change due to story reasons. So it made sense, but just be willing to change. Just because you came up with it in session 0 doesn't mean you're married to the idea forever. Half of marriages end in a divorce, so you can change your mind.
I think dark.
Sorry.
Hang in there, folks. No, I think also to add to that is be okay with your mistakes, because mistakes don't have to be mistakes in D&D.
Yeah.
In life, sometimes mistakes have to be mistakes, such as divorces, marrying the wrong person. Mistakes are mistakes. In a game, they don't have to be. So being willing to be up there, as the DM or a player, it's like, if you make a mistake, it's okay. Sit in the game, try to have fun. Win your way back if you can't. Just like stay in it. If as a DM, half the time I don't know the rules. Thankfully, a lot of that time Michael is playing, and he knows the rules very well, so he can jump in and help me out if he feels so like it. And when I work with other people, it's sort of like it's a lot more about role play. But I make a lot of mistakes, or I do things that I don't intend to do just because I'm role playing and I'm in the moment. But it all works out. As long as you're there and you're having fun with a group of people, it all works out.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about session 0 is you're setting that foundation so that everybody knows what they're getting into. Every building has a good foundation. They don't just throw some stones there and say, okay, it's ready.
Yeah.
Or some, I guess, branches, some 2x4s, since we're in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Anyway, you want to make sure you have a good foundation for your group. Obviously, I'm not an architect, so that you can build a campaign that lasts for a good long time and makes you all very happy. That's what a good session 0 is about. Thank you, creative thinkers. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your expertise. Creative thinkers all around the globe, thanks for joining us for another week of the Creative Thinker Podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.